Please help me welcome the disruptive leader behind Gear Up, Shut Up, Dave Moore. Dave?
Thanks, Jeff. Woo! My mama told me there'd be days like this. But how do you really prepare somebody for a day like that? All my flight training up to this point, all the courses I'd been through, the FAA training, nobody ever said you're going to wake up middle of the woods, a mile and a half from nowhere, with your ribs broken, puncturing through your lungs, your face ripped off. The doctor you're teaching how to fly in his new Belunca Super Viking, which I'm sure he's not too happy about, is unconscious, pinning your face to the ground, and you don't know if he's dead or not. So how do you train for something like this? It takes me back to Navy flight school. I remember sitting there in an auditorium full of student naval aviators, so excited to be there. This old captain got up in front of us. He said, you have two buckets. You have a bucket of luck, and you have a bucket of experience. If you reach into your bucket of luck, you better put that in your bucket of experience because you might run out in your bucket of luck. And if you run out, you're going to kill yourself and your crew. We're here not to teach you the stick and rudder. We're not here to teach you how to take off and land only. We're here to teach you how to be a leader. This is what we need you to be able to run the mission, not just fly the airplane. So why disruptive leadership? Disruptive leadership is working outside the norm. A couple companies that have good examples of disruptive leadership is the Boeing Corporation. They built the 777, and instead of just doing what the engineers thought they would do, pilots always complain. Who builds the airplane? Because we fly them, and it's never pilot friendly. So what Boeing did is they went to every single one of the people. They went to the people that handle the baggage, the people that work in the baggage compartment, the people that fly the airplane, the people, the mechanics that work on the airplane, and they built what was said to be the best airplane, the most friendly airplane to fly and work on, and for the ground crews to utilize. Gear up, shut up. Imagine walking into work and your supervisor telling you, get your packet, sit at the table, and don't say a word. That's what I walked into at Ohio University when I was first hired to the Ohio University Flight Department. I'd been a flight instructor, I'd been working in an industry for several years, and now as a transportation pilot who was about to take off into severe weather, the captain approached me and said, all you need to know is gear up, shut up. We had 3 board of trustee members on that airplane that day. Really, we had 4 passengers, because I don't care if the wing was on fire, I wasn't going to speak up or say a word. Roger was Roger. He has a 20-year veteran military aviator, 20 years of civilian flight experience, and here I was, a 21-year-old co-pilot, but he didn't want to hear anything that I had to say. The military, however, taught us that there's a much better way to lead your crews than gear up, shut up. They actually say gear up, speak up. Position power versus personal power. Position power is, I'm the captain, I'm in charge, this is my rank on my shoulders, you're going to do what I say. Well, what's that going to get you? Pretty much when I was waiting tables in college, we used to say, let's give them BMS, bare minimum service. They're only going to do as much as they have to just to get the job done, and they're not going to give you their best. Personal power, however, is something that I learned through all the leadership and development classes the military put me through, and that will make your employees want to give you your best. Every time they come in front of you, they'll want to shine their best. When I was at Air Station Corpus Christi, they made me the supply officer. All of a sudden, with absolutely no experience in supply, they gave me a $9 million budget and 34 employees working for me. I had no idea what to do. The XO gave it to me. I said, XO, how about I just take the money, I go to Vegas, and I see if I can double it up. He did not have the same sense of humor. He was pretty by-the-book kind of guy. He said, no, Dave, this is your shop. So I had a gentleman, actually one guy was older than my father that was working for me. So I was very intimidated walking in there. But they said, Dave, just use what you learned in the cockpit, and that's what you're going to apply here. They will work for you. We turned out to have a very successful year. Our supply shop was actually used as the model after our biannual inspection that the whole Coast Guard was going to follow. We had everybody working in synergy, everybody working in sync, and it was an unbelievable thing. Certain people, though, the way that I found with position power is empathy. If you look and see what your employees need, if you actually respect them for what is going on in their life, they'll work harder for you. All Dave wanted to do was go out and fly his airplane. I had employees in there. I had Tony, my first class. I would give him something to do. I would leave. I would come back and be sitting on my desk before the deadline with my name on it, giving me credit for it. He knew he was going home early, though. So when Tony walked into my office and he said, Dave, he said, I have a real family situation. My oldest daughter has special needs. She's getting picked on the bus. This is presenting a real problem for our family. Is there any way that I can come a half hour later to work and I'll stay a half hour after? For me, it was a no-brainer. I said, absolutely, Tony. If it can make your life a little bit better, all you do for me, Please go ahead and do it. I'll deal with the command. I'll talk to them. I'm sure they'll have no problem with it. I was in shock. When I went to my supervisor, he sat down and said, Dave, the Coast Guard is like Walmart. We're a business. Does Walmart care if their employees are having problems? The day here starts at 7:30 and it ends at 4 o'clock. He needs to be here at 7:30. I was shocked by the response I got. So I walked back to my office and I thought for a minute, and on my way out, my supervisor said, Dave, do the right thing. Well, his version of the right thing and my version of the right thing were certainly two different things. So I walked in, I said, Tony, use the side parking lot, come in the side door, and if it goes any further than this, I'll talk to the captain because I know he's a reasonable man. Tony worked so hard for me for the rest of the year, I looked like a superstar coming out of the supply shop. So why crew resource management? $14 billion a year is being spent in corporate America trying to teach people how to become leaders. Leadership is not something, nobody seems to be able to define it, and there's so many definitions out there, but to be a leader, you need to have examples. You need to say, this is what I did, this is where my successes, and these were where my failures were. I found as an instructor pilot in the Coast Guard, no matter what I did, and I became an evaluator pilot, so I had the last say-so before somebody went off as an aircraft commander with a 5-man crew in the severe conditions. I had no idea what they were going to get into, so it was my job to know that they weren't going to kill everyone. So what I found out is, every single time a new aircraft commander went out there, he came back, he heard something, he smelled something, or there was a situation with a crew member that we could never possibly train him for. So CRM is something that was started actually 40 years ago. It was called for by the American people after there were so many incidents in the airplane industry. Aviation was having aircraft accident after aircraft accident, and NASA said, we need to come up with a way that our crews can work better together. The final flight was a United flight where both pilots were actually looking down, and while they were looking down, the airplane actually ran out of gas and crashed into the mountain. Unbelievable it sounds, but you get preoccupied. There was a landing gear light, and it was just a bulb that was out. So they killed everybody on the airplane and themselves for a light bulb that failed. So CRM came up with a few different approaches, and when I heard everybody's looking for a way for leadership, they've been teaching this in the military forever. I've been through the Coast Guard training, I've been through the Air Force training, I've been through the Navy training, I've been through the civilian training, and it all boils down to this: building and empower your leaders from the bottom up. You can't do anything. If you're the aircraft commander, you're the instructor pilot, the evaluator pilot, it doesn't matter what your title is. If you don't set the environment, I would never let people call me Sir, Mr., or Lieutenant Moore in the cockpit, or Major Moore when I was with the Air Force. I always wanted them to call me by my first name. I wanted them to know that they had as much input into the airplane because we all hit the water at the same time. So you have to empower your people. We do. We all hit. I've been here about a second earlier in the front. You have to empower your people. You have to empower your people, but when you empower people, you can't just give them the responsibility, you also have to give them the authority. They have to know when they speak up that they have the authority to make a difference in how the crew is working. Interpersonal communication up and down the chain of command. It's the hardest thing for a new guy sitting in the back. We were out on a search and rescue mission, and we're flying, and there's a jet skier that's been out for 3 days. 3 days he's been out in the middle of the Caribbean. The last hope search is that the Coast Guard sends an HU-25 Falcon jet out into the middle of nowhere. There's no land around. We're out there, and we're flying. A brand new guy sitting in the right seat, he's our right observer. He's sitting there, and he says, sir, and he's kind of stumbling over himself. He goes, sir, I see something orange out there. Like it was no big deal. I'm like, that's kind of like what we're looking for out here, something orange. You know, this is our second sortie flying on this guy. We've been flying on him 3 days. And sure enough, the radar didn't get it. The forward-looking infrared radar didn't get it. This brand new observer, he got it. He was the hero of the day. It was actually over in the Bahamas. It was the Secretary of the Bahamas' son. They were very thankful for us, and I got to meet Ricky Martin, which was pretty cool for me. He was out there. So everybody on a crew is as important as everybody else. A good leader only has to be the person that makes the final decision, brings them all together at the end. My best leadership story was with the Air Force. I end up with the Air Force, a turn of events. I'm 36 years old, and I'm at SEER School. Survive, evade, resist, and escape. Worst training you could possibly go to in your life. They beat you up. They put you out on a mountain. You're cold. You're hungry. They put me in charge of 84 people. So nobody wants to be in charge. But because of my position, that was the only way I was picked. They went around the room, and they told us to stand up. And as they called out ranks and the years in rank, that's how I ended up being in charge. So all I had over these 84 people were position power. I knew that. Most of these kids, one kid, he was born 2 months after I graduated high school. So all he's looking at me now is somebody who was given the authority, but I had not earned the authority yet. It takes time. You have to create an environment. Those guys knew by the end of our 2 weeks out on that mountain, those guys knew that they could confront me, especially my junior officers. We found ourselves in a situation that we had a gentleman, he was on the wall of death. It was a terrorist situation. It was very unstable. There was a lot going on. We haven't eaten in 2 weeks. I'm down about 20 pounds. I'm tired. I'm older than everybody. And I just wanted it to be over. They make it so real, it was unbelievable. So we're sitting there, and he's on the wall of death. In Dave's mind, I'm 36 years old. I'm thinking, well, if you have a wall of death, somebody's going to be on it. You wouldn't just make a wall of death and have nobody sit on the wall of death. We had a female with us, and to me, I thought we were allowed to let one person go to take out and send a message that we were captured. To me, to get the female out of the situation was the number one choice because we were in a terrorist situation and with the way that the terrorists looked at treating women. Everybody else went against my decision. I had a choice right there. I felt that I was right. I really knew that I was right. But I also knew that if I stood with my decision, because being right's not always right, that I would lose this group for the rest of the time. And if I lose this group, we're now in a survival situation, not, hey, we're planning for retirement, we're planning for this, we're planning for that. We just need to get through the next 60 seconds. We need to get through the next 60 seconds at a time. So I actually went with my junior officers, and it showed that I was willing to bend and be flexible, and it was my greatest leadership feat ever was actually by going against what I knew was right. Crew resource management is measuring risk versus gain, decision-making, and gear up, speak up. Leading from the rear. This is us at the Grand Canyon. Apparently, the lens adds 40 pounds, but just to me on the end right there. I was in a bad part of my life. But in this picture, you see us, and we were sent out by the Coast Guard, and we were on a mission, and we had two choices. We could either continue on with the mission, but we knew that we were fuel critical at this point. So we kept flying. The gentleman standing right second from the left, he was my co-pilot, but he was actually an instructor pilot, very seasoned as an aviator. I was sitting chairman of the FEB at the time at a very low rank, and I was in charge of the chief pilot of the whole group. So we're coming in, we're low on fuel, and Jamie says, Dave, we got it. Let's go ahead and continue. We've got this. I looked at the numbers, I looked at our fuel burn, I looked at the winds. I said, well, even if the winds leave us, even if our good tailwind we have right now, even if we don't have that, we'll be okay. We won't be good, but we'll be okay. So I said, Jamie, that sounds like a good idea. So we went forward. We were on a mission here. We were hunting subs that they were making in South America and smuggling drugs up. We got the mission done. We got to the airport. We're coming into the airport. I'm holding on the flaps in the gear. I say, set flaps 20, landing gear down, landing checks. The horn just keeps beeping and beeping and beeping. I was like, why would Jamie not silence that horn? All I hear is, Dave, we have a problem. The left main landing gear will not come out. Wow. So here we are. We put ourselves in a position, we're just okay. We're not great. But now we're not okay because we did not have the gear, or the gas for the gear not to come out. So I immediately take us up into a short orbit delta pattern. We're up there burning a lot of fuel because we have a lot of drag out. And while I'm doing this, we're working through a System 2 gear extension in the front of the cockpit. 3 guys in the back, 3 good guys. The guy directly to my right, I've been on so many missions with and known so well. He's actually a senior chief in the Coast Guard now, and he's a well-deserved senior chief in the Coast Guard. So we're flying around. We come in. We're down to fumes. We get the left main landing gear blows out. We come in and land. After we land, I look back in the back, and I notice that everybody's out of breath. They're sweating. What's going on, guys? What are you doing? Jose took the initiative to organize them as a group. He didn't ask me as the aircraft commander. He knew I didn't have time to deal with that. But he knew if that System 2 gear extension didn't come down, the next thing we had to do was a free fall and unlock. And he knew our situation with the gear. Something that was never taught. Nobody ever said, in this situation, you would do this. He took the initiative because he knew to be a leader, he could stand up and lead that enlisted crew in the back, and I would be okay with it. So to be a disruptive leadership, you have to be tolerant. You have to be tolerant because people will make mistakes. How large of a mistake you let them make is up to you. It's up to the situation. These were life and death situations. A lot of times in corporate America, you're not in a life and death situation, but you're still leading people. It's the same thing. It's like Nick Saban. Nick Saban is a good coach. He's a good coach no matter what university he goes to because he's a leader. Because he understands this, that what you have to do is people have to buy into you. They have to follow you. Not a system, not a few words you memorize. They have to buy into what you have to say, what you're doing, and know that at the end of the day that you'll get their back. So, PMA. This actually, I was surprised. I'm sitting in Air Force Survivor School, another survival school, and this is water survival. So I'm sitting in survival school, and I'm in a raft. And we've just gone through all this different thing, what you can eat, what you can't eat, all the different scenarios you could be in, and we're sitting in a raft. We're in freezing cold water, and they start asking us questions, the instructors. And they said, in a survival situation, what is the most important thing that you could possibly have? One gentleman said food. I was pretty hungry at the time as well. I thought that's a good answer, but really we're in a saltwater situation, it's gonna be water. I was wrong as well. Positive mental attitude was his answer. I couldn't believe it. But positive mental attitude actually saved me when I told you I woke up middle of the woods with this gentleman pinning my shoulders on to the ground. I actually got him out of the airplane. My ribs were puncturing through my lungs, and I started dragging. I just saw a light, a beacon from the airport out in the middle of nowhere, and just started dragging us towards it. We got about halfway out. We're over an hour and a half into it. He finally regains consciousness. He said, David, the doctor, Dr. Michael, he said, David, you forgot my shoe. I looked down, he had one old man penny loafer on, he really did, and it had the penny in it. And I roll him off to the side. I said, Dr. Michael, I said, we just crashed the airplane. I'm an hour into this. I'm exhausted. I'm scared. Blood's hanging down. My face is hanging off the side of me. My lungs are punctured. At that point was the clearest point that I ever knew that if I stopped here and took a break because I wanted to, because the adrenaline had started to wear off, I wanted to stop. But I knew if I stopped that Dr. Michael and I would lay there and die in the middle of the woods that night. Positive mental attitude. Thank you. Thank you.